So good evening and welcome. I'm John. I'm the event director at Literati Bookstore. We're pleased to welcome Marlee Grace to our At Home with Literati series. And in support of Getting to Center, tonight she'll be in conversation with Jacqueline Suskin. Overview, of our webinars for those of you who are joining us. The chat is closed, but you may want to keep the chat window open during the event as I will be dropping links to purchase Getting to Center from Literati Bookstore. And if you're watching us later on YouTube, there are always links to purchase books from the store in the description below. You can submit questions for the Q&A using the Q&A feature that's available to you at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on where your toolbar is at any time. Feel free to submit questions whenever they come to you, and I will read a selection at the conclusion of the conversation. As a reminder, you can shop for more books at literatibookstore.com. In addition to Getting to Center, thousands of titles are available through our super cool curbside pickup service if you live in Southeast Michigan. And in lieu of a book purchase, we'd also ask that you consider a $5 donation to sustain our virtual programming. So whether you'd like to think of that as this week's or this month's or this year's or maybe next year's subscription to our programming, you can make donations at literatibookstore.com/donation. Otherwise, we simply thank you for your attendance this evening or this morning or this afternoon, depending on where and when in the world you may be joining us from. So without further ado, I'll introduce our author and moderator this evening. Marlee Grace is a dancer and writer whose work focuses on the self, devotion, ritual, creativity, and art making. Her practice is rooted in improvisation as a compositional form that takes shape in movement, videos, books, quilting, online courses, and hosting artists. Marlee's Instagram dance project, Personal Practice, has been featured in the New York Times, Dance Magazine, Vanity Fair, the Huffington Post, and more. And Jacqueline Suskin has composed over 40,000 poems with her ongoing improvisational writing project, Poem Store. She is the author of 6 books, including Help in the Dark Season. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, The Atlantic, and Yes Magazine. She lives in Northern California. They can't hear you, but they can sense you through the power of the internet. So please join me in welcoming Marlee Grace and Jacqueline Suskin into your living rooms.
Did you hear that yelling? Jackie's downstairs watching, just went, yeah.
She's like, yeah. Oh my God. What a friend.
Friend?
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really, as the darkness comes in, I'm really feeling not well. But I do have this. Maybe should I do the rest like this? Should I really end Scorpio season just like this?
So, no one would mind.
That's kind of how
I
feel.
It would make sense.
Kind of how I feel right now. Okay. Anyways.
Well, as a Scorpio, I'm glad I can catch you in the depths of that because I fully understand. I'm really excited to talk about your book. I have been reading it and reading it and reading it and just underlining and dog-earing and getting so excited to talk to you about it. Thanks for writing such a beautiful book for all of us.
Oh my gosh. Well, should we tell the people the story of why I even write books before we even start? I think it's beautiful.
Go for it.
I'm emotional enough that I could cry, but it feels so relevant because it feels like I think people often ask both of us, like, how do I write books? Like, how do I get into book writing or self-publishing, something we also both do? And so in 2015, fall of 2015, Jacqueline was a resident. I know, time flying, half a decade ago. Jacqueline was a resident at Have Company, which is an artist residency I ran in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hello to all the Michiganders watching tonight. And in May of 2015, I had put out the zine, How to Not Always Be Working. And I think you were there in September. I looked at Twitter, which I never look at. And there was a tweet from what I often call some lady, which seems so rude. Anyway, some lady named Kate, who was like, posted a picture of the zine, and she had gotten it at Case for Making, the art supply store in San Francisco that I had taught a workshop, How to Not Always Be Working At. She got the last copy. And I looked at her Twitter and it was like, senior editor at Chronicle Books. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I like looked at you and I was like, should I like ask this lady? She wants to make a book. And you were like, yes. You immediately email this person. And so I emailed Kate. She at that point had become her own literary agent. We signed a contract. I made How to Not Always Be Working. I dedicated it to you. And then later you were like, I think I want to maybe write a different kind of book. And I was like, let me put you in touch with Kate. You sign a contract with Kate. We put these books out a week apart this year. Kate also helped me make this book. And then you dedicated this book to me.
That's right.
So cute.
It's pretty cute. I would also like to address a very special part of that story. That is, Marlee had not written Kate for a long time. That tweet was not new. That tweet had been sitting there, and I was like, you need to write this woman today. And that I think leads us into many wonderful things that are in your book, which are these moments where you get to choose whether or not you're hard on yourself. You get to choose what your practice looks like. You get to understand the moment when you actually arrive is just the moment you arrive. And sometimes that means you waited a long time to tweet back or write the person who could change your life, but that actually that's the perfect moment for it. And there's no need to be hard on yourself about it. Perhaps you weren't ready then. And now in that moment you were, and you had a little cheerleader friend to be like, do it now, write this thing, get this woman in your life. And I love that moment. I love just how it does take sometimes someone else saying, yeah, you're worthy, you should do it. Your idea is absolutely worthwhile enough to become a book. And I kind of feel like this whole book is you saying that to your readers. Like, here, there are these moments where you can like amp yourself up and be really productive and find like all the lessons in your productivity and find all of the greatness in your creative process. But then there are all these other moments where you can just be gentle with yourself and take care, maybe reel it back a little bit, maybe like drink a glass of water, take a bath, calm down. The thing will come to you when it's meant to come to you. And I felt like this whole book was just like this really beautiful prayer and reminder of that. Like, for all of us who want to make things and see the world be a better place, this book just kind of says like, you're doing it. You're doing the best you can. You're doing enough. Or I love the part where you're like, you don't have to say I am enough. Actually, maybe you're not enough, and that's also fine. You can just be who you are, be what you are, and that's what you have to offer. So this whole book to me feels like that kind of gesture of that moment of being like, oh, now I'm ready to reach out to the literary agent and become this new self-help author that I never knew I would be. And suddenly that's my life.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I love that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Do it.
Well, I love the I'm thinking about a couple things. I mean, it's funny, How to Not Always Be Working, I dedicated to you and Andrew, who is a dear friend of mine in California. And, you know, I started talking to Kate. I had signed a contract with Kate, but then I went through a divorce, and then I moved across the country. And it wasn't until I had been in California for a few months, like almost a year and a half later. And I was talking to Andrew and I was like, I'm like really broke. I'm in a lot of pain emotionally. I don't really know what I want to do creatively. And I like casually in the sentence was like, I have this book agent and this book I'm supposed to write. And he was kind of like, wait, what? Like, you've never told me that. And I was like, oh yeah. And similarly, he was like, you have to do that. Like, that's what you have to do. And yeah, in getting to center, that's one of the things I talk about is like, surround yourself with people who really see you and don't like a phrase I love to say is like, who don't co-sign my bullshit, who aren't like, you'll get to it someday, you'll tweet her back someday, you'll write your book. They're just like, right now is when you actually have to do it. And so yeah, I'm just so appreciative of those people in my life. And yeah, I think that's what so often when I'm giving people creative or art advice, something I often say is like, surround yourself with people who push you. Especially if you're a person who gives yourself a little too much permission to just kind of sit back and wait for something to happen. So
yeah, for whatever reason, and that's, I think that something that just came up when you're saying that is, this idea of holding space, and how a lot of times, I'll be holding space for my friends to try to help them move through things and process a lot of emotional things. That's always been the place that I hold for people. I hold a lot of space for my friends in that way. But you're holding space for every single person who reads this. And I thought that the whole time. Like, however many people hold space for you to be able to keep your practice aligned and to like keep you going, then you are in turn holding space for the thousands of people who will read this book. And it's the same. You might not know them, you might not be there in person with them, but to me, I think that has the same action. And I just love to see, just because I know you so well, just how many places in this book you like dig into something that's so maybe natural about your personality, but you break it down. And I can really relate to that, because in my book, I tried to do that in these ways that I had never known were possible. And I think it's really special to see, oh yeah, you're just another human being. This is a book of all of these practices and possibilities that have worked for you to keep you in line with not only your creative productivity and your career, but also just your mental health and your ability to stay alive. And that's kind of why I think it's such a perfect moment for it, because I feel like in this moment, not only are we trying to figure out how do we continue to make art and keep giving what we have to offer to this world and care about it and think that it matters at all, because I feel like there's even more pressure on that now to wonder if it matters at all. And it does, it matters even more than ever now. And then at the same time, you're also saying, and in the midst of figuring all of that out, there's also just here, you got to take care of your body. You got to take care of your mind and your spirit. And this book is kind of this perfect combination of those things. It's like this mind, body, spirit practice balanced with this creative, the preciousness of keeping up your momentum as a creative person in this day and age, when that really is like such an important thing. And it's easy to lose sight of, especially in a country that has not really supported artists in the way that other places do. So.
Well, should we talk about practice?
Yeah, I would love to. The opening chapter of the book. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about practice over the years, about ritual and about how to create a ritual. And there's so many things in this chapter that lean back into the thing I find that's most important about practice, which is that you should not grasp it. It is not meant to be this whipped like discipline that you have to follow the same method every single day. And I love that you say these are things to return to, like just things to return to, just things that work for you, spaces that are important to tend to, that are good to return to. I would love to hear you talk about just that method of understanding that and your practice in general, and even maybe your practice now, because it's probably exactly what I'm saying, so different than it was when you even wrote this.
Well, I'm thinking today, I always like to just talk what's really specifically on my mind. And I mean, maybe this is always on my mind, but we talk a lot about phone boundaries. And so this year, my partner is a wildland firefighter. And so she was gone a lot. And I noticed that I just had my phone like on me more, because we were like communicating so much through text messages, through pictures, like, it was really sweet to like be able to say good night. And our nights were like, I couldn't really I was keeping the phone in the bedroom a lot, and then just never stopped. And that's usually what happens, is there's some reason to have the phone closer, whether I'm traveling and it becomes my alarm clock, or there's just a reason I might need it. And they vary in the realness of that or something. And so just yesterday, I wish I had it up here. I purchased an object, which if you've seen the documentary, The Social Dilemma, it is featured in that documentary. It is a kitchen timer lockbox that you can set for from 1 minute to 10 days, and you hit lock and you cannot open it. I think you can break it with a hammer, but it was $70, so I don't really have an interest in breaking it at this point. So I, you know, my partner's here. I don't need to wonder where she is at night or in the morning. And I trust that if there's an emergency with my family, we'll be in touch when we can be. But it's like, I put it in the box last night before bed and set it so that it wouldn't unlock until after I like took my dog on an hour hike this morning. And it only really takes like one day of doing something like that to really like remember, like, I really want to start my mornings not only without my phone, but I've been thinking about how much social media, you know, you're taking in if you're scrolling, you're taking in hundreds of like people's art, ideas, opinions, lots. 2020, the year of opinions. I've never seen more opinions in my whole entire freaking life. And amongst the left, amongst the radicals, I don't even think I follow a single conservative person. There's so much coming at us right now that waking up this morning, I saw like this little very round bird outside that I'd never seen a bird that looks like that before. I almost like yelled to Jackie to be like, Jackie, you have to see this bird, because it's so interesting how much my brain cells were like refiring with themselves. This is like, I literally felt like it was the first. I was like, this is the first bird I've ever seen in my life. It's beautiful. Just because I hadn't first taken in so much, it's so much information. And so, yeah, I mean, and in the book I say, like, if what truly makes you feel good is to like wake up and check that email and scroll for 50 minutes, great. I don't care. Like, I think that is the offering of the book, is like, I'm just sharing what has made me feel really bad and what has made me feel really good. And you can take those and like design them in a way that makes sense to you. So that's what's on my mind right now, is really wanting to, you know, and then I like put it in the box for like 2 hours later in the day, because I was like, I don't want it. And then pretty quickly, like, actually needed it for many things. And I was like, okay, I need to like think about this a little bit more when I put it in the box, because I am working right now and I really need it. And it's not there. So yeah, I think that's like my practice right now, is really just sort of returning to some of the like less screen, more just like connecting with myself and the little round bird I saw today.
Yeah, I love the little round bird, your first bird ever. I just love the idea of the shifting of your practice, and how you're like, yeah, at certain points in my life, this is what works for me. I need my tools. I need it to look like this. And I'm indulging in this way. And then now I'm going to check myself and I'm going to move into the next phase. And I think as artists, that's just what happens. There's a part in the book where you're just like, when you feel the most unproductive is when you're gathering your material. You are the researcher, the treasure hunter, the finder of awe and glory, and we need you. We need you to, you know, it's like, that is it. You cannot consistently judge yourself based on a rigid practice, because often your practice doesn't look like a practice to others. You might just be observing the world. You taking in that bird and not having any other distraction. I also love the part of the book about distraction. Like, sometimes distraction is actually exceedingly important to your creative practice. I mean, there's just the ability to see these things without a clear cut line maybe seems a little bit like, oh, that doesn't make sense to me. I should have a very clear cut, rigid practice. But the truth is that that's not how most artists work. They haven't all throughout history. We, you know, move from one thing to the next according to where we're at and what we're able to take in. And I noticed that with myself was, you know, with the phone or with anything, like there are certain times in life where I'm feeling extremely productive, or I'm feeling like I'm really on it, or I'm feeling like all over the place, but I'm very well aware that I am taking in a lot of information for a future project. And perhaps that looks like, okay, I've been taking in a lot of information. I woke up at 2 a.m. last night and wrote a poem because I had this dream. I actually wrote this poem in the back of your book because it was next to my bed and I didn't have any paper.
Oh my God, that is my favorite thing ever.
Being pissed at myself for not having a notebook by my bed, which is 100% a thing that could have come up for me. I was like, well, I have a pen and I have my dear friend's book and there's a blank spot for me right there. So I'm going to write my freaking poem because that's my practice. And that's not what it looks like.
Waste of space. Gotta fill it up.
Gotta use it. Now it has a poem about it, my weird dream. But I think, there's something about this first chapter of the book. Like, I love that the book starts that way because it gives this permission to be like, everything else in the book can build up your practice. You can add pieces, you can take pieces away, you can allow yourself to have permission to let your practice be this flowing thing instead of something so rigid. And everything in the book kind of circles back to that. So I'm glad we're starting everything. It's just all of it is something to return to. And I love that.
Well, and I borrowed that, excuse me. I don't even remember if this is in the book or not. You'd think I'd know, but I'll just share it. I think a lot about, there's this, so in like 12-step programs, there's the 11th step is about like keeping a conscious contact like with your higher power through prayer and meditation. And in the literature about it, it has this really great part that says when you stray from your practice. So it doesn't say if, it's like when, because they're like, that's what's going to happen. They're like, when that happens, the answer is just to resume prayer. And I'll never forget the first time I read that. I was like, oh my God, I just have to resume prayer. I just have to resume praying. Like, and that's what I did this morning. I like woke up with my new alarm clock I got that has a really terrible sound, which is too bad, but maybe that's good. I'll get up. And I like got on my knees and like said my little prayer. I didn't do my I didn't pull my cards and light my candles today, but I just like said my little prayer. And it just reminded me of, like you said, you could be like, oh, I should always have a notebook next to my bed. Like, I can't believe I didn't have it's so easy to go there. And so often I go to like, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't been praying in the morning. I can't, it doesn't say resume prayer and tell yourself you're a piece of shit and unlovable and unworthy of connection, et cetera, et cetera. It literally just says resume prayer. It's just like, start over. And so yeah, I think that is a big part of the book is like, I think that's what makes me still a lot of my like sadness or frustration with my own journey is that that's what I often forget, and I'm really mean to myself. And so, that's what I think I love about the book. And I also just want to say I'm so grateful. I think this is why I love art, or even thinking about like the way our careers just like continue to propel the other person forward. It's just like constant, like, oh my God, thank God I can read this book every day as a poem so I can like get ideas to write my next book, and vice versa. It's like, I see that with the people who are reading this book, like people are like posting quotes from the book, and we both share the idea of like how much is channeled. So many times I read something I wrote and I'm literally like, yes, we've talked about this before, I think in your event. I'm like, that's brilliant. I'm like, who wrote that? Like, it was me. But, I'm just so grateful to see that, because, a lot of this I wrote last year. And so I don't remember a lot of it, or it's not as ingrained in my brain, or some of it that I wrote a while ago I do remember more. But yeah, I'm just grateful for that, like the spiral and the cycle of creativity, both my peers and sort of colleagues in art and book writing, and as well as the readers, how much like, especially with Getting to Center, it's like, it just keeps proving back to me that it's what its purpose is. So
yeah, and I think it will just continue to do that. As I read it, I was like, oh yeah, this is just something that I need to remind myself of from time to time as a person in the world. And why am I so fixated on being productive and always getting it right, or being in this like heightened state, or being hard on myself if I'm not? And you know, a lot of times I'll circle back to be like, why am I so hard on myself in that way? And it's like, oh, well, probably because I'm taught by capitalism that I need to be making lots and lots of money. And I'm like, you know, that's not actually what I believe in. So I don't really need to be hard on myself. But you have to have all of these practices to remind yourself of these things. And in that place where you get grounded again, you start to be gentle with yourself, and then you open up, you know, you resume prayer, and then you open up, and then you're a channel again, and then the things can flow through you. And that's the consistency of practice. It's not about how many times. I love that idea that it's like when you fall back into this place, when it will happen, you will have your own practices, a whole toolkit, and like books and books full of tools. You know, the tools are there. That's what I always say about being human. It's so wild that we've already created all the tools that we need, and we just have to use them. There's a lot that gets in the way of us using them.
Yeah. Well, something I'm thinking about really quick, which is another thing we both think and talk about, but thinking about like creative practice extracted from capitalism and how it all works. If you heard John's intro of me, he spoke of, you know, I have this project, Personal Practice, that is my dance Instagram feed, which, as he so eloquently put, has been featured in the New York Times, Vanity Fair, Dance Magazine. It didn't say my books were in any of those places. It said an Instagram dance project I made up 5 years ago, which I have made $0 at. And so it's actually really interesting. I feel like sometimes people might look at parts of my like career, what I do, and like assume like some sort of magical something. And I'm actually like, oh, it's actually the thing I have the most debt in, the most training in, and make the least amount of money at, that like the press is so interested in, you know? And so I think that's the other thing that I talk about is like, when you're looking at your practice, like really look at like what, and it's the thing I love to do the most, right? I mean, isn't that interesting? Like, I actually didn't turn dance into my job. I turned writing books into my job, and I use a similar practice. You know, I don't think, sometimes I'm like, oh, I got a dance degree and became a self-help author. Like, it's funny, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Like the composition and improvisation flows in such similar ways. But yeah, that's not lost on me. Like, especially in the last year, I've really been thinking about that, about this separation of these parts of my art practice and career. And that's why I sort of break it up. Like, what's your business? Like, my business practice is different than my dance practice. And sometimes they intertwine, but in a lot of ways, like, I do not rely on dance as a form of my income. Sometimes I make some money at it, but it's pretty rare. And it's, in some ways it's on purpose, in some ways it just is what it is. And so, yeah, I think I'm always thinking about like, I mean, this is where this book is sort of a continuation of How to Not Always Be Working, because it is like, there was a point where I was like, I should be making money as a dancer. Like, I should be making money at this and this and this and everything. And then I was kind of like, whoa. Like, I need to start to just see where the different places are and sort of go towards that and go towards these other things. So practice. Yeah. I'm practicing accepting that.
We're all practicing constantly. I love this, the way you just spoke about that makes me think of one of the things that I love the most about this book, that I would, if I were like telling someone, which I have, to buy it, this is what I say about it. I just say it's accessible. It's written in a way that's like a conversation. It's really open. It's not too rigid about the use of language or the ideas, and you kind of flow in and out like it's a conversation. And I appreciate that specifically because of the content matter. It's like this is a conversation. It is an open flow. It's a giant guess. It's like, you know, the whole thing is a big guess. We've talked about that before, and I could feel that in this book, and I could feel that in like the tone that you're using in your voice when you're writing about these things. Is you're not saying you're an expert, you're not saying you know exactly what's what, but you're saying, like you just said, this discovery I've made, this thing that I've noticed, and this has really worked. And it's a continuation of a moment where some clarity was offered. You found some clarity. And I love just being able to say to someone, yeah, you should read this book. It will move you through it with this accessible ease. You know, it's really gentle. It's really welcoming. And I think for that's like the thesis of what practice should be. This thing that we are, you know, we welcome it. We're gentle with it. We're gentle with ourselves in trying to figure it out. It's a lifelong process. It's never going to just be like, oh, now I found my practice and I figured out what works. It's like, no, it'll probably work for a season, and then you'll shift into the next season. And maybe little pieces from the past will keep being a really important part of that. That's probably true. You know, there are things that just like consistently work for me. And I love that in the book. They're like, these are the things that consistently work for me. I go back to them all the time.
Yes.
But I just love that's such a natural way to approach all of it. So that's my selling point, the accessibility. I'm always down with that, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll drink my water.
Well, yeah, we'll drink water, and maybe we should, if people have questions, or if there's anything if there's any other thing that we should touch on.
Let's talk about our around the block or drive across the country.
Oh yeah. Okay, good. I love it. Yeah, there's this part in the book that I underlined that I will be happy to read if you want.
Thank you. I'd love that.
Sometimes I joke that in order to separate myself from have company, or I'll just say my past, and to return to myself, my center, I could have just taken a walk around the damn block. But in my true tornado form, I thought it best to sell every object I owned and pack up my Subaru and drive about as far away as I could. Both are right. Both could have worked. This whole life is just a series of choosing either to walk around the block or go out as far as we can. And over again, we gain new information about what works and what doesn't. And I'm so into that both could have worked concept, and reminding yourself of that all the time. Just because you made a choice and this is the outcome of your life and this is the direction that you've gone in, and you think about a past choice you could have made that might have worked or might have been better, that both are fine. You know, both pathways. It almost makes me think of like the parallel universe concept. Like if you thought it did happen. It's happening somewhere. It's in some place in time, you did only walk around the block, and that's the life that version of you is living. And I'm really into that kind of like trippy thought pattern. But I also just think that little paragraph does for me is it just gives me this whole feeling of permission of being like, you know, sometimes it's really just as simple as go outside, take a fresh breath of air, ground yourself, and come back to the thing. And sometimes you have to just be like, goodbye, I tried my hardest, I'm done. And it's crazy how it's just sometimes it's one or the other, but it's always both. You can always do either way, and I just love that. That's so thrilling to me. It's awesome.
Well, it reminds me of like, yeah, kind of going off what you said about the accessibility of the book too. It's like for me, I mean, it's rare I read fiction. I read a lot of self-help books, as you know, and I love my self-help books. And, you know, I would say most of them have really specific opinions about what you should do and how you should handle a situation. And that's helpful for me. You know, I take what I want and leave the rest. But I think that's where I feel really differently is I'm like, I don't think that there's like a way. I don't really think I mean, that's why it's called pathways to finding yourself within the great unknown, not the pathway.
Yeah.
Because it's I mean, I feel like I used to love choose your own adventure books as a child. And so I think that's I like kind of write self-help books in that way. I'm like, that you could go this way, or you can go around the block, or you can drive to California. And yeah, I am from Michigan. I love Michigan so much. And when I moved away for the first time, I had only ever lived there until I was 28 years old, and had really built a community there with my partner and husband at the time, John. And after we got divorced, Michigan is abundant and there's a lot of people, a lot of communities, but our community in Grand Rapids was like very small and like really specific. And I was just like, I have to go. I have to go very far away. And yeah, I think now, in my current life, maybe this is a little pre-Saturn return, post-Saturn return. I'm like, if I was maybe going through a similar grief or transition, I might just walk around the block. Like I might just be like, I just need to walk for a couple miles. And so, yeah, I think that's, yeah, again, like I think some people like have those phrases where like you can't run from yourself, and I'm like, no, but I can sure as hell run away from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and not look back for a while. It's like, or actually I can, like a little bit in the parallel universe way, I'm like, I actually can run from myself. Like I'm gonna run very far away from this self and run towards a different self. And so again, I think it's like we all have the power to sort of like create the language and the narrative around our actions. I also think like one action there's so much around like motives, and that's something I think about a lot and write about. It's like maybe you need like space from your partner or a friend or a roommate, and you can do that in a really loving, you can exit a room and be like, I'm just going to go do my thing for a second. Or you can be like, I'm going to go do my thing for a second, and like hope they like follow you because they know you're pissed or something. It's like you can literally say the same sentence and do the same thing and mean something very different. And so yeah, I think that's what yeah, it's both and it's back to like not hating yourself. For a long time I was kind of like, maybe I should have just walked around the block, maybe I really messed up. And it was like, no, what? Like I had an amazing time when I lived in California. I had an amazing time coming back. If I wouldn't have gone to California, I would have never come back to Michigan, moved back in with my ex-husband, run an artist residency, met Jackie, fell in love with her, and then moved to New Mexico. It's like there's just I think that's where yeah, I'm such a believer in everything happens as it should, exactly on time.
Yeah, and that's so perfect to say that about the concept of both also, is because you don't have to disown or discredit your past or your past choices just because your choices now are ones that you're happy with. Like you get to look back on it and be like, yes, and I could have made that work. Perhaps I can honor that. I could see now the work that maybe I didn't do or would have liked to do if I were this person then, and I can just enjoy seeing it, and I can learn from it still, and also at the same time love the choices that I've made and really appreciate where I am. I just think that feeling of practicing the idea of both all at once is something that just keeps coming up for me. So when I landed on that in the book, I was like, yeah, that is at the heart of being able to move through things. It's holding all of it at once. And we so often, I think, even especially in the world of self-help and wellness, we want to like shed things and release things and let things go. But as you eloquently talk about in this book, shit comes back around all the time. And I love that there's a whole section that's just like, well, it's okay to be slow and to like have it be a really long return. You talk about your Saturn return, you're like, some of these lessons will just keep looping back around and they'll take a long time to learn, but you can hold all of it at once and appreciate it, and not have to be hard on yourself for being like, oh, I didn't do this perfectly the first time. And what I like about all of that is that not only does it illuminate this idea of the personal world and like the heart space and again like your spirit and your mind, but it's the same exact practice when it comes to creative practice. You can hold all sides of your project at once. You can hold the failure that the thing you didn't finish, the thing that never got started, the thing that was this great idea that then like kind of crumbled. And maybe there'll be one thread of that 20 years later, you're like, oh shit, I figured out how to weave that in. And instead of beating yourself up for that whole time about it and wasting all your precious energy, just let it fall apart, keep walking, and know that you get to still, something will come of it. I love that. I feel that way through this whole book. I'm like, oh yeah, everything's fine. We're going to be all right.
We are. I think, or like we're not, and that can be okay too. Should we look at questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think, am I allowed to open the Q&A box? Oh, John.
Yeah, if you want to open it up and read them, please feel free.
I love to.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'll read them. Someone says, Marlee, Michigan misses you. Oh my God, cute. Do you think you'll ever return? This is so sad. I'm like, do you think you'll ever return to the Midwest, or that Have Company would ever have a second iteration? I attended a few workshops there and miss it dearly. Also, what's your favorite Fleetwood Mac tune? My favorite Fleetwood Mac song is Silver Springs, which is a unreleased, it's now released. It was going to be on the B-side of Rumors. It's my favorite Fleetwood Mac song, right up there with Think About Me. Jacqueline, do you want to share your favorite Fleetwood Mac song?
Oh my gosh, Think About Me is really high on my list. Top 10 favorite bands of all time. I don't know if I would name a favorite song though. I'm glad you could. That was so. Maybe Wild Heart. I don't. Maybe.
Is that Fleetwood? Is that Fleetwood or is that Stevie solo?
That's Stevie. Okay. Yeah. Counts. Same for me.
For those of you watching who don't know, I do have the sentence Fleetwood Mac is my favorite band tattooed on my leg. So that's probably why that person asked. Anyways, yes. Will I return to the Midwest? Sure, probably. I mean, we definitely I mentioned my partner and I moved to the desert, and we're kind of in like a season of we moved here for a job that she got as a firefighter, and so we're that season has ended, and we're definitely asking questions around like, where do we want to be, where have we both lived, so it's unknown. I definitely think by the time I'm 50, I would like to own a home in Michigan, so I'll just put that out into the universe. So I'm sure, so yes, in the next 18 years maybe. I mean, I love Michigan so much. I love the lake so much. I mean, I really love both my parents who live there. I really like my friends. I love to Have Company. I think I say it in the book that Have Company is my favorite place I've ever been, which makes me like so kind of emotional. So yeah, I loved it. We'll see. How do you trust that your writing idea is good? Whew.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it's interesting because I'm interested to see how our answers are different for this one, because you have like writing training, like you went to school, like you have such a, like you also write so accessibly, but have like a training and a degree in like forming words on paper. So I am just interested if our answers are how they differ, because writing is such like an untrained form for me. I mean, I guess I have some, and I encourage artists to do that, like look for the proof. Like I guess a lot of people keep buying the writing that I make, and so I have some trust in like that exchange of like, well, people keep seeming to read it and say that they like it. But as some of you know, I love to post like mean Goodreads reviews, and there was one recently that was like, I have such a crush on Marlee. She's like, so I like love her. I have such a crush, and her book is like really jumbly, and like I don't like, it's like really not for me, but maybe it's for you. And I actually like loved it. I was like, wow, like this person just came onto Goodreads and was like, this book is like not very well edited, but Marlee is cool. I was like, weird, but it's because that's the thing is like people can, this is in the book also. It's like some people love my quilting class and hate my dance videos. Some people love my books and will never take my quilting class. Some people, some of my friends really, really like me and for sure do not follow me on Instagram because it's annoying to them. And I just think that that's the other thing is like there are separate parts of us. This is truly not answering the question. I did just notice that I had the word God written on this post-it note next to me. Wow, I'm really all over the place. Anyways, the question, how do you trust that your writing is a good idea? Oh, here we go. I got it. I got this. This is like borrowing from some like Elizabeth Gilbert Big Magic kind of thing, but there's like, if you feel like this is where it's like, it's so channeled to me. I think in my event with Faria, I said, God told me to write books and I don't fuck with God. Like, I'm just like, I have been called to write and I trust my relationship with the universe that my like version of a higher power or God is not leading me astray. So I trust that when I feel the call to write, that it is meant to be written and read by someone. And that's how I kind of keep the ego out of it a little bit too. And I like ask other people. Like, I'm pretty sure I've asked Jacqueline before. I had my friend Faria who wrote the foreword. She read the entire book before it came out. Like, I ask people and I'm like, does this make sense? Like, is this good? And a lot of times I don't. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your answer, Jacqueline. It's a great question. I'm like a little bit like,
it's a good question. There's a lot of things. Well, in my book, I have a whole chapter about share your work, share your answers, share what you write, get people to read your work. And Marlee was just talking about that.
My God, I literally just jokingly was like, like
that. Made sure I did. That's, I think, one of the most important ways that I approach is this good or not? Because sure, 100%, I have a base reaction of, is this something that I've channeled that's like a sacred, holy thing to be delivered to as many people as possible? Yeah, I feel connected to that, but I have a lot of practice that allows me to feel connected to that. So part of that is there's also like the fundamentals of writing and knowing, like, am I creating something that's unique, that is also accessible? Like, am I creating something that's full of cliche language, trite words, like stuff that's not super interesting, that won't grasp somebody? Like, if I'm doing that, then it's probably not that great. Like, I might want to beef it up a little bit. I might want to add my own perspective, because what makes your writing really good, what makes Marlee's book great, is that it's her voice. It's specifically her weird way of looking at the universe. It's not necessarily that all of the ideas in this book have never been talked about before, but they've never been talked about by Marlee. They've never been talked about with her take on it. So I think it's less about subject matter. You know, and I talk about this a lot in my book. There is always something to write about. You are surrounded by infinite details. There's so much subject matter floating around you, in your past, in your pain, in your joy, in your mundane day-to-day life, in your kitchen cabinet, wherever. But your take on it and the way you choose to talk about it, the language you are drawn to that's interesting and dynamic and different, and the way you put words together is what makes it good. And that's
I love that.
This is it.
Well, I'm just literally looking at your book. I love this part where you talk about, like, you look at writers you are enjoying who are writing about their great pleasures and triumphs, and you find yourself turning toward whatever source supplied them with such exuberance. And I love how much you write about, like, you know, be mindful of like cultural appropriation, but look around, like, what are other writers inspired by and grabbing from, and storytelling. I mean, I think that's the other thing is, like, I am attracted to and generally read things by people who are telling like untold stories. So I think that is part of why I think my writing is a good idea, partly for myself, because so much of getting to center or is like, yeah, I mean, I like got sober when I was 22. I got married. I came out. I like moved across the country a bunch of times. So it was like, I want to read. I also tend to write what I think is maybe missing. And that makes me think it's a good idea, I guess, because I'm like, oh, I see some similar stories to mine in books in the world. But like you said, it's like, it's not even a comparison thing. It's like, but I haven't seen mine. And even if it is super similar to someone else's. So I like that.
Yeah, I think that's the best the idea, the way to find how is your idea great. Like that's a long answer, but that's a really potent question. So
great question. Honestly, I highly recommend buying Jacqueline's book and finding your answer right here. John's back.
Well, I think we have time for one more question, and maybe I will ask the common bookstore question, but I'll open it up too, because I know it's a question that authors are getting a lot on their virtual tours. But in addition to each other's books, we're always curious to hear what else you might be reading and would recommend to our viewers and readers as well. But I also have a bedside table that is full of a stack of books that is collecting dust slowly because it's hard to read. So we can also open it up to what maybe you are listening to or watching that you're enjoying, as well, as we all enter another period of safely isolating.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I just finished the reality series Vanderpump Rules, which features the staff of Sir Restaurant in Los Angeles, California. And yes, we did watch all 8 seasons. And when it stopped was also daylight savings time. And so it's like getting darker earlier, and we don't have our thing to like literally take brain cells out. And so yeah, life's just a lot different without Vanderpump Rules.
Did you watch the end of season specials though, where they all get in huge long fights?
We watched part 1 of 3 of the reunions of season 8. So we do that's actually a great, thank you, John.
Go back and watch the reunions. We'll
watch some of those. Oh Jacqueline, what are you paying attention to?
Well, I love when things like this happen that I've never heard of what you guys are talking about.
It's just really bad Bravo TV reality television.
Yeah, never heard of it, and I always feel liberated by those moments where I'm like, how have I not heard of that? I just bought this book. I loved her first book, and this book, Transcendent Kingdom, but her first book, Homegoing, is so amazing. So I'm excited to read that. I just got it the other day, and I just watched the Queens Gambit, the chess show on Netflix.
Did you like it?
Which was, yeah, it was all right. I watched the whole thing. So
that is what everyone is saying. Everyone's like, I was recommended the Queen's Gambit, watched the whole thing, and I have no idea why anyone recommended it or why I watched the whole thing. And that's like,
yeah,
everyone is saying that. I just
some kind of magic.
I just pre-ordered a book I feel excited about, edited by Jenna Wortham and Kimberly Drew, which is the book Black Futures. And it's all interviews and art with the most amazing contemporary Black artists over time. And so that I think comes out in like a week, 2 weeks or so. So I feel excited about that. 2 friends who also put out memoirs this year would be Arden Mirren, who actually has an amazing podcast about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And I've also been watching The Bachelorette. Arden put out a memoir this year called Little Miss Little Compton, and Cameron Esposito put out a memoir called Save Yourself. And those are both really good. I do have real information up here outside of Vanderpump Rules.
Those are amazing recommendations. We had the pleasure of having Jesse in support of Transcendent Kingdom virtually back in September. And yes, Black Futures comes out on December 1st, and folks can pre-order it at literatibookstore.com. We've reached the top of the hour. Marlee Grace, Jacqueline Suskin, thank you so much for joining us at Home with Literati, and for sharing your wisdom and your time with all of us this evening. And we hope you both continue to stay safe and be well. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us at Home with Literati. And
Thank you.
see you all at the next event. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Literati. Thanks, Jacqueline. Bye.
Thanks, Bye.